I am going to be showing you guys how to take all the guesswork out of mixing your mix bus. I remember years ago, I was throwing every plugin in the book on my mix bus, different limiters, EQs, compressors, but I found one that is the best plugin that you can put on your mix bus. It's called the God Particle by Jaycen Joshua. I'm going to be showing y'all how to work it, what is all in it, and then we're going to compare it to some other popular options, and you can decide for yourself if you think this is the greatest plugin that you can put on your mix bus. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Welcome back for those tuning in for the first time. So excited that you are here. Thank you for clicking on this video. I hope you get so much value from it. My name is Luke Relfs with the Bedroom Professional, where we teach you how to get quality recordings, mixes, and masters all from the comfort of your home studio. And if you guys know anything about me, even from a few short videos, I love Jaycen Joshua. I mix really similar to him. I've taken so much from him and crafted it into my own style. I think he is one of the greatest mix engineers out there at this current point, and he's created a plugin that is absolutely phenomenal called the God Particle. What the heck is the God Particle? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Tune into the screen and see what we are working with today. So I got an awesome record here from my friend Leroy Booker. Y'all can go check him out depending on when you're watching this. This record may be out, it may not be, but it's phenomenal. So on my mix bus, which again, if you're not familiar with what a mix bus is, it just means that everything, our vocals, our drums, our bass, our music, everything within a full mix is feeding the mix bus. So everything is going to this plugin. So the different plugins that we put on the mix bus are really going to alter the sound of our entire mix for better or for worse. And so the God Particle is this phenomenal plugin that has so much going on with it. Let me tell you guys why this is so important. So why it's important is, one, it just takes the guesswork out of everything. I keep saying that phrase, but it's so true that when you can just throw this plugin on and make a couple tweaks, it is just so musical. Trust me, I am not, as a genuinely professional mix engineer, I am not a big one plugin stop shop kind of person, but this plugin is too good to ignore and not use. It's just so musical and it's phenomenal. So really what it is again, all of your instruments, vocals, drums, everything is running through this God Particle. And so what is going on is you will see some indicators with these green brackets, if you will, at some different locations. So I'll go over these in just a moment. But let's just start here. So when I play the record, the input is going to come through here. We want to be hitting around this part. If we're a little quiet, if we're a little loud, it's all right. We just don't want to be slamming through this indicator right here. So that means that everything being pushed into the God Particle is in a good spot. So it's going to give us the best sound. Right here in the middle, I believe, is what he calls kind of like the magic knob. And it's sweet because you can turn this up to 200% or all the way down to 0 and just have a little bit of it in. He typically leaves almost everything on this plugin at nominal value. So we have our input knob. That's where we can easily just turn down the full gain from our actual mix into this plugin so we can gain it down. Typically, that's what I do. I'm also still trying to get better at making sure that my mix is super solid and at the right place to push into the God Particle. Sometimes I'm a little hot, which he is too as well sometimes, which is okay. You can just pull back your input knob if you need to. But then what we have here is not exactly EQ. It looks like EQ almost, but we have a high knob, a mid knob, and a low knob. And so essentially these translate to right over here. So what these do is this is a amazing multi-band compressor that compresses and keeps in check your lows, your mids, and your highs. And the way that you know where your lows and mids and highs are and should be hitting are these indicator knobs, right? So if you need to add a little sparkle, if you need to take some of the meat out of the mid-range, or you need to add or subtract some of the lows from the kick and the bass, these little brackets will show you where you need to be hitting on the God particle for them to really be doing some work. And then you'll see the gain reduction numbers here on the very bottom under the brackets, essentially, or under, on this corner is where it'll show you how much gain reduction is happening on the highs, the mids, and the lows. So let's go back to this middle knob. Again, I think it's best to keep this at 100%. If you want a little more, you can turn it up or you can turn it down. So what does this knob do exactly? It's so hard to describe genuinely, but I think he calls it magic. And it's so funny because there's really no other word to describe other than that. I'll play with the knob as I listen back through this record here in a moment, and y'all can really tell what we are doing with this plugin. But the less that you have, the less saturated essentially the mix will feel, and the more it's turned up, the more saturated, the heavier it will feel, right? Jaycen is really big on heavy mixes, which I love. And so this knob, if you will, is almost like a heavy knob. Again, I know he typically keeps all these things just at 0 or at their nominal level. So I just typically keep that at 100. I really rarely ever turn it up or down, but y'all can experiment with that. But essentially it will saturate or increase or decrease the heaviness of your full mix. And the limiter is amazing. So you can turn off and on the adaptive limiter. He claims that it's one of the best limiters out there on the market if you were to just use this part of the God particle. And I would have to agree. What I will show you guys is a back and forth with the God particle and some really famous and great limiters on the mix so you guys can hear exactly what's going on, and then you can tweak your output. I don't typically ever mess with that a lot. I try to keep the limiter at 5 as well, which is what it starts at. And again, typically I'll just pull down my input a little bit if I need to, which I believe I did on this record, and then just push the limiter a little bit to compensate for it. So even just at normal value, let's go ahead and take a listen to this mix that I have here without the God particle, and then we will check it out with it on. So I'll go ahead and toggle it on and off as we're listening through, and you can hear just how big of a difference it is. Again, we're going to hear a really big increase in loudness, and loudness doesn't always equal better, but you will just hear a lot of things. The low end gets so much meatier and rounder and just sit right. Again, it's going to get quite a bit louder, but just really try and listen to the difference in the dynamics of the mix with and without the God particle in general. You'll see how much this can do for you. You can simply toss this plugin on your beat, on your mix, and without having to tweak a whole lot, it's going to make it sound 80% better. So let's take a listen to this, and I'll toggle it on and off.
Finally made our lives up for the moment. She gon' wanna vibe when we throw this on. I am not a liar and she know this. I be shopping at Wagoos for the moment. Are you down to ride on a visit? I've been going off every feature, maybe a little critical. They saying you illiterate. I got a couple books that you help on me lay your sentences. My golly, see the collective walking through streets near Harley, 6th Avenue. Get rowdy, and it's by the lake, then the buzz, yeah, probably. Might just hit slip, then we dip near Donnie's, dancing all night, 4th of July party. Bump to my bad, I'm sorry. Come through, you Clydes and Bonnie. Oh, this is.
So as you can hear, just a humongous difference when we turn this plugin on and off. And so now that we ran through it, let me tell you guys a little bit about what I did on this particular record. Again, this was pushing pretty hot, so I went ahead and pulled the input down just... Ooh, excuse me.
My God, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
Pulled this down just a little bit and bumped the limiter up to 6 dB from 5 and just pulled the input from my mix into this plugin down negative 1.5. Something for me as well that I notice, if anyone else is pretty experienced using this plugin, I'd love to hear your take on this. But again, I mix really, really similar to Jaycen Joshua, a lot of the same processes for the bass, the vocals, and things of that nature. I typically find that even when my vocals are sitting in a good spot, spot and they don't feel too mid-rangey, they typically are pushing the mid-range of the God particle quite a bit. And so I'll just come in and you guys can look it up. Maybe I'll put a picture up on screen as well here in a moment, that the God particle does have a certain curve to it where there are some frequencies being added even when you just throw the plugin on. And I do believe that there's a good amount of boost in the mid frequencies to give you a little heavier of a sound. And so typically I'll pull the mids back a little bit because my vocals are pushing those pretty hard. I really like to make sure that my lows, especially, and my highs, unless there's a snare that's hitting pretty hard that just needs to sound that way, I will typically make sure the lows and highs are right in check. But my mids are normally coming in and out of these indicators, and that's what he says, is that as long as you're right along those lines and you're typically hitting the indicator, sometimes you're over, sometimes you're under, and most of the time you're right in that sweet spot, it should be sounding pretty good. So for me, I typically pull these mids back a little bit and then again pull the input down and bump the limiter a bit, and then I don't touch a whole lot after that. You can sidechain the God particle. I don't typically use that a whole lot, so I'm not going to go into that a ton. I do like this oversampling ratio. Typically, just the more you oversample, the more CPU usage the plugin will take from your computer, but the better it will sound. Essentially, it'll just oversample it, and it typically makes things sound a little cleaner. So if you're working on the track and you want your computer to be running pretty well, I'd have this down on 1. But if you are printing your mix with the God particle on it, I would go ahead and pop into this setting and turn it on 8 to make it sound as good as possible. I typically like having this on RMS and peak as well. The short-term LUFS probably isn't a bad option to see where you're at LUF-wise, because all digital platforms are reading off of LUFS now: DSP, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all that good stuff. And then you get the God particle animation that you can turn off. I'm not sure if that really saves CPU or not. I think it looks cool, so I keep it on. But yeah, while you're mixing, you can turn this down and turn it up. Maybe we could do a before and after, but you probably won't hear a huge difference. I just know when I'm printing the mix to send to clients, I'll have that on 8, but when I'm working on it, I'll typically have it on 1. We'll just keep it on 8 since it's doing all right now. But let's go through and just kind of see what everything's doing again while this is on. You guys can see that we're hitting right in these indicator spots. And then we'll do a comparison with the L2, the Brainworks limiter, and the Pro L2, which are really popular limiters that people are probably using on their mix bus or on their stereo out. And we'll just compare the difference. They're all set to plus 5 dB as well. So the same amount of gain essentially that the God particle's adding. We are getting a little bit of different dynamics with the multiband compressor from the God particle. These are just simply limiters, but they will be the same as far as adding the same volume, right? So you'll just see how big of a difference and how much weight the God particle adds versus these different limiters. So we'll do that in a moment, but let's again just have this God particle on and listen through the mix, kind of see where the indicators are hitting and make sure that we are good to go and in a good spot.
Finally made our lives up for the moment. She gon' wanna vibe when we throw this on. I am not a liar and she know this. I be shopping at Wagoos for the moment. Are you down to ride on a visit? I've been going off every feature, maybe a little critical. They saying you illiterate. I got a couple books that you have formulate your sentences.
So again, you guys can see that we're hitting right in that sweet spot for the input from our mix into the God particle. We're nailing it for our lows, and then we're right in that area for the mids. Sometimes we're pushing it a little bit, which is why I turned it down, but for the most part, it's right in there. And then this high one is real short on there because typically you don't need your highs pressing a whole lot. You will know if something in your mix is just way too bright, or the frequencies, the higher frequencies of it are just pushing way too much. Sometimes if you have a really crackly snare, I don't know, a really high-end kind of snare, you will get a big hit on there. That's fine. Don't completely change your snare or something like that to fit within this. I've even seen him post videos where he did a mix that had a snare like that, and the snare was just completely destroying the high band. But he's like, hey, you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you got to break the rules and just make sure that to your ears at the end of the day, it sounds good and it feels good, right? That's always more important than meters, but this thing does do a great job of keeping everything in check for the most part if you're hitting your meters. So Let's go ahead and just play this mix through for a second here. I'll just loop it off, and I will go ahead and play it with the God particle for a second. I'll turn it off, and then I'll turn on one of the limiters, and then I'll turn that limiter off. I'll turn the God particle back on, and so forth. And then I'll turn the other limiters on one by one to show you the difference between what the God particle sounds like and what that particular limiter sounds like, just so you can hear the difference. So just hang tight with me for the next 2 minutes or so, and let me just play through this so you can really hear the difference on why the God particle is the one plugin that you should be using on your mix bus, and you don't need to look any further, and then we will wrap it up. So let's check it out with the God particle and compare it with the L2.
Finally made our lives up for the moment. She gon' wanna vibe when we throw this on. I am not a liar and she know this. I be shopping at Wagoose for the moment. Are you down to ride on a visit? I've been going off every feature, maybe a little critical. They saying you illiterate. I got a couple books so you help formulate your sentences. My God.
Pretty crazy. Let's keep it going. Let's pull up the Brainworks limiter, which I've heard great things about. I do love this. It's a great comparison, but the God particle is just too good. Let's check it out. We got the God particle on right now.
My golly, see the collective walking through streets near Harley, 6th Avenue, get rowdy, and it's by the lake, then the bus, yeah, probably. Might just hit slip, then we dip near Donnie's, dancing all night, 4th of July party. Bump to my bad, I'm sorry, come through you, Clydes and Bonnie. Oh, this is that moment that you waited for, all that BS to the door, dance all night, then dance some more. Don't let them trip you up.
Again, a decently close comparison there. That pushes gain really, really well and really dynamically. But again, the biggest thing for me that I love about the God particle is the musical feel of it, and also the lows that you're getting, and just the weight that you're getting from this God particle plugin. You can't replicate it with just a single limiter. And even if you are somewhat replicating the sound of the God particle by itself, you're gonna have to put 3-4 different plugins, saturators, compressors, all kinds of different things to do what the God particle does in one plugin. It's absolutely crazy. Let's listen to the God particle again and compare it with the L2.
Finally made our lives up for the moment. She gon' wanna vibe when we throw this on. I am not a liar and she know this. I be shopping at Wagoose for the moment. Are you down to ride on a visit? I've been going off every feature, maybe a little critical. They saying you illiterate. I got a couple books so you help formulate your sentences. My golly, see the collective walking through streets near Harley, 6th Avenue, get rowdy, and it's by the lake, then the bus, yeah, probably. Might just hit slip, then we dip near Donnie's, dancing all night, 4th of July party. Bump to my bad, I'm sorry, come through you, Clydes and Bonnie. Oh.
All right, so there you have it. You need to go to Cradle.com right now. Cradle Audio, I believe it is. I'll link it in the description. And this is not paid or anything. Cradle, if you're watching this, hit your boy up. Jaycen, if you're watching this, I love you, my man. I'm so appreciative of all the knowledge you've shared. Hit me up. But I genuinely just love this plugin. I'm so grateful for Jaycen and Cradle coming together and making this a possibility. It's absolutely changing the way that those of us at home and just with only a couple years of experience really can get to a really great professional level and professional sound. So I advise that you go pick this plugin up. Again, this is not sponsored or anything. I genuinely just think this plugin is top notch and you cannot beat it for the price. It's a great price point. It's absolutely phenomenal. You can use it on everything, rappers, singers, if you're using YouTube beats typically and you're not mixing the beats. One, I'll have some videos coming out soon so you can start mixing your own beats and making them sound even better. But the way to fix that really quickly is just throw the God particle on it and it's going to sound a lot better than it did before as well. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Please let me know if you have any questions. Drop them in the comments. Let me know if there's anything that you want to see from me, how to mix beats, how to mix bass, how to mix vocals. I'll be coming out with all kinds of tutorials in the following weeks, so please subscribe, like if this helped you out, and until next time, thank y'all so much for tuning in.